Hello and welcome back to the Gaming Podcast Live. I'm your host, Mia Byte, and today we're going to be continuing to dive into all manner of the most curiously captivating queer conversations on the web. It is our season finale today, and it's been a wonderful season so far. We've had some very, very good conversations, and I'm excited to keep that going today on our Trans Day of Visibility special. But before that, I will once again remind you that you can keep up with all the latest news and features from Gaming Magazine by visiting us online at gamingmag.com. Yes, you can head on over to gamingmag.com and get all of the newsy type stuff that your heart desires, especially the queer newsy type stuff. We love that. We love that. Right, as I mentioned, today is Trans Day of Visibility. Shout out to all my trans sisters and brothers and non-binary siblings, everybody in between. And we have like some of the coolest people around, the coolest trans people around, to chat about just how great trans people are in general, which is because we're awesome, right? Yeah, we're great. So yeah, please welcome in Annie Dro, the Juliancito, and Voice Quills. Yippee! Hello.
Oh.
Hi.
How is everybody doing today?
Doing
Pretty
great.
good. Yeah.
Okay.
Vibing.
That's good to hear. Vibing on Trans Day of Visibility. I feel it. I love it. And we're going to do it. So, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for making the time today. I hope it's been a great day so far, and it will continue to be a great day. We're going to go ahead and get to know each of you a little bit better. So please go ahead and introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about who you are and the things that you do. Let's start with you, Annie.
Hi guys, I'm Annie Dro. I'm a streamer, content creator. I former professional gamer for Valorant. I was signed to Cloud9 White. You know, just the best all-girls team in Valorant and esports. Not to toot my own horn, but yeah, now I just kind of stream and create content. So
Absolutely. And wonderful, wonderful human being too. So good to know you. We haven't spoken for a while, but it's
been a while. We've known each
Yeah.
other for like so long. I actually
yeah.
love like there's like history, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I think like we were both at, what was it? Was it 2018 TwitchCon? I think that was the last time that I saw you. I think the only time I saw you in person. And that was like 6 years ago. Oh my God, that was 6 years ago.
It was 6
Okay.
years ago. We're
We
old
don't have
now.
to
We're old.
We don't have to think about that. Quill,
Yeah.
please introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do? Tell everybody all the
Hi.
things.
I am Voice Quills, also known as Ashley Heather Quills, my official legal name now, by the way.
Yay.
I am a voice actor and YouTuber. I voice over stupid memes and comics, and I've also been in some actual productions like Feed a Pooty Samurai, which came out 1.0 recently, and Warframe, which is my big up there role. So yeah, that's just kind of me. Please stop asking about McChickens, please.
Oh, God. All right. Don't look into that, by the way. Okay. And last but finally, not least, the Juliancito. Tell everybody who you are and what it is that you do.
Yeah, hey, I'm Juliancito, and I am just a content creator. I play TTRPGs. I haven't streamed in a while, but I'm hoping, because I'm currently back in school, so I'm school and working full time, so little hectic with the schedule there, but hoping to get back into it at least a couple days a week soon. And yeah, that's me.
Yeah. Well, looking forward to that. Right then. So, before we jump into the big major topic, let's talk about what we've been up to recently. So, yeah, I want to know everything about like the things that you've been playing and doing or watching or reading or in the world of all of that. What is it that everybody's been up to? Let's go in the reverse order. Let's start with you, Juliancito. What have you been up to?
I've been playing Baldur's Gate.
Okay. That's pretty good.
Very fun
That's pretty
game.
good.
Watching a lot of TV. Abbott Elementary is one of my favorite shows right now. And
I've not heard of that.
catching up on-
What's
Oh,
Abbott
yeah,
Elementary? Sorry.
It's a good one. It's like a mockumentary style show about a school in Philadelphia where Like they've got just it's like you follow all the teachers and the students around, and it's good. Yeah.
So it's like a school version of The Office, kind of.
Yeah.
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 Cool. That sounds cool. And what was it that you were reading? Sorry.
I've been catching up with some manga, so like Spy Family, My Hero.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, Spy Family is just adorable. I just like it's so wholesome. I don't understand how something can be so funny and so wholesome when it's about like assassins and spies. It's
Yeah.
it's ridiculous.
It's very good.
I'm just like adore Anya. She must be protected at all costs. You know, like goddamn.
Absolutely.
Goddamn. What about yourself, Quills? What have you been playing recently? I hope it's not just Signalis, because I know you
I do need to play it again though for footage for a thing I'm working on.
I'm actually playing that right now. That's what I was
yes,
just playing
It's
before
so
this.
good. Oh my god. I could talk about it for the entire show, not gonna lie. So I've been kind of dancing on with a few different bits and pieces. So I've been playing a bit of Factorio, which kind of bit me again because I saw some like YouTube videos like, oh, these challenges and stuff, and I was like, I just want to play it again. So I went back in, some Helldivers. I've been reading. There was this cool comic I saw, like, was it Curiosity Archive, I think it was called on YouTube, doing like a rundown of Humanity Lost, which is like humanity went into space and went into war with a bunch of aliens, started losing. We put an AI in charge, and then the AI basically, if you've seen All Tomorrows, like, or read All Tomorrows, the AI kind of did that to us and genetically modified all humans into weird monsters to then win this war. So then now it's like the one last unmutated human is like the last one remaining. And yeah, so reading through that is really cool. And then I recently watched the Netflix redub of Neon Genesis with the wonderful Casey Mangelo as Shinji. And it was very good. It's one of those, it's very 90s anime. There's a lot of like weird moments that me and the wife were cringing at because the main point of view is like a 14-year-old boy. So there's a lot of like awkward scenarios around that, shall we say. But like,
I've not seen it myself, but I've heard it. I guess a little bit.
It's very good. There's some weird moments in there. There's some very questionable things. But I still really enjoyed it. I then also realized afterwards when we finished, and my friend's like, "Yeah, Shinji's like the most annoying little twerp. Like he's the worst kind of person." I was like, I relate to him for 90% of the show. Please be nice to me. Like, so, yeah. Now there's only like 5 movies I need to watch to see how it actually ends, because it so there's a lot to go through.
I'm looking forward. Like, I've not seen it, but I know generally about the series, and it does some weird twisty turny things.
Yeah.
So that'll be super interesting to hear about when you're through with that. Annie, tell us about Signalis, I guess.
Robot Yuri in space. That's about all I know so far. Virus on the ship. I'm not super far into it. I've only been playing for like an hour or so. My cat's eating my egg sandwich. Hold on.
Oh no.
Oh, baby.
Oh yeah, no, cats have been like an absolute nightmare today. Before, like the guests will know, just before the podcast started, my cat was like climbing up onto everything, every part of my setup. So
she's snacking right now on my desk.
Aww.
So.
Aww, little baby. Aww.
Yeah.
Mine's an absolute nightmare. We think he has,
actually, I dyed my hair black when I got her to match her. So.
Oh my god, that's so cute!
It's so cute.
I wanted to make her feel like we were twins.
Twinsies.
So.
Let's go. Let's go. I love that. Yeah, so Signalis, you're about an hour into it, so no spoilers on our end, but I hope you're enjoying it so far. How have you been getting on with the gameplay of it?
Yeah, it's honestly, the gameplay is pretty interesting. Kind of reminds me of like a classic Resident Evil style of fixed camera, isometric. But yeah, and also kind of get like Zomboid vibes from it too, a little bit, with like the combat system where you like, you need to shoot them and then like stomp them. Kind of getting like Zomboid.
Yeah,
vibes,
I've not played Zomboid, but I know they had like a very similar mechanic in Resident Evil Remake, where if you didn't go back and like burn the bodies, they would like respawn into Crimson Heads later on and just be stronger and faster. So there's something a little bit like that in it, I think, isn't there? Like, I can't remember. It's been so long since I played Signalis, where they just keep getting back up unless you destroy them.
Maybe
Maybe
I don't know. They've
Well,
been
look
getting
forward
up
to that,
regardless,
so-
and I'm not really sure why yet. So
Mhm.
we'll figure that out. I'm sure after
Okay.
this. So
Cool. Yeah. Is there anything else that you've been doing playing?
I've been watching a lot of anime, a lot of TV shows. I've been watching like Ninja Kamui on. Been
I've
watching.
not heard of that one. What is Ninja Kamui? If you don't mind me
It's like an
asking.
Adult Swim anime of easiest way I can explain it, if you know like Yoru from like Valorant, it's kind of like an anime a little bit like if Yoru was the main character, I guess. I don't know, he's like a cyber ninja. Somehow it turned into a mech anime right now.
Okay.
But
I'm nodding along like I know anything about Valorant.
yeah, it's pretty interesting. I've also been watching like a few other shows like Death and Other Details. It's kind of like a British detective show that's been pretty interesting to watch, you know. It's kind of like one of those shows where you don't really know where it's not very predictable, and that's what I kind of like about it is cuz like, you know, especially like murder mysteries, you're kind of like always trying to be like piecing it together, but it's been so far pretty unpredictable and I enjoyed it quite a bit. So yeah.
I love stuff like that. I've actually been watching recently. I've only seen the first episode so far, but there's a new Netflix series called Three Body Problem. I don't know if anybody's seen it yet, but yeah, it's like very mystery box. Like the whole thing is like a setup to like you get so many questions that you're asking like in the first episode, and I love those kind of things as long as there's payoff down the road, obviously. But like the general vibe of it is that some scientists have found that in their like particle accelerators, they've gotten some results which don't make sense. That the results that they're getting essentially break science, and then you find that a lot of scientists all over the world have been self-ending for some reason. So there's like a detective that's investigating, or like a former detective that's investigating it, and then you have these scientists that are talking to each other, and they're going to the funeral of one person that unfortunately passed from whatever happened, and then one of them, you assume the thing that happened to this other person is now happening to that scientist. So it gets a bit, it's very mystery, and there's like other stuff going on. I'm feeling like it's very like Illuminati type stuff too. So I'm very, very into seeing where it goes, but I've only seen the first episode at the moment. Other than that, I spent my weekend running around the Insomnia Gaming Festival. They invited me down, and I am so very tired. I forgot what it was like to just exist out in public, just be running around somewhere, just doing stuff. To the point, conventions, they're just like, it's terrible. I got to the end of day 2. They had us do this. Oh God, we could take part in this like this zombie infection game thing, which wasn't a video game. It was like a live maze setup where they had actors portraying zombies and like a gun system that you would use. You had to go around and like take tags and like hit these tags with different colors on to get like points. But all the time there's like people dressed up, actors dressed up as zombies chasing you around these mazes, and it's like if they touch you, you're basically infected and dead. So I have never been in a situation where I've been more scared and had so much adrenaline pumping through me at the same time. And like I got halfway through it, I was so out of breath as well, because you're just like, you're not allowed to run, but when you're sprinting very quickly from place to place and your adrenaline is racing, like I was like spent. The end of that day, I had to go find somewhere to sit down for half an hour and just have a couple of drinks, because I was like, I never want to do that again. But it was really fun though. It was really, really good. And I also got to do something called Life-Size D&D. Unfortunately, the way that it panned out, I had to like quit Life-Size D&D halfway through because they were behind time. Unfortunately, usually these are like paid experiences, but it was free for creators. So I went into they had 2 teams going into Life-Size D&D, and you had to make your way through on both sides, probably dealing with different things. It might be different or the same on both sides. I'm not sure. We got about halfway through. I was the sorcerer. And I found this magic sword. And I did tell the guys that I had to go at this time to make the zombie infection appointment. So I ended up finding this magic sword, picking it up. I was about to pass it to somebody else, and the DM's like, only you can hear this. It's the sword whispers to you, feed me blood. And I'm like, okay. So I decide just then and there to drive the sword through my own chest as a way of giving it to the rest of the party, because there were going to be one person down. Sorry.
Oh my God.
One person down just to power up this sword as much as possible. The only problem is I don't know who the other creators were who were in there with me, so I'm never going to have closure on whether or not they won, and that's going to haunt me forever. But I thought that was a very apt way to go out of that experience. Just the sorcerer they're hanging out with suddenly deciding to off themselves for some reason and imbue them with the tools to win. Yeah. So yeah, that's how it's been for me these last couple of days. That, and I've been playing still a lot of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Been taking my time through that. No spoilers, chat. I will bonk you on the head. Yeah, about up to where have I gotten to right now? Me, Gongaga. That's all you gotta know. That's all you gotta know. For those of you who play Final Fantasy VII, but not Voice Quills because she refuses to play Final Fantasy VII.
I'm just not a big. Besides Final Fantasy 14, I'm just not a big Final Fantasy person.
Sure. Okay. Don't worry, we'll convince you. Yeah, listen, I've convinced many to play Final Fantasy VII, and I'll get you eventually. I sound like an anime not an anime villain, like an 80s cartoon villain. I'll get you to play Final Fantasy VII one way or the other. All right, so
The Final Fantasy agenda.
yeah, that's it. That's the only agenda I have is the Final Fantasy agenda, getting everybody to play Final Fantasy. Right then, awesome. We're going to move on to today's topic of conversation. And as it's Trans Day of Visibility, we're just going to have a good old natter between the four of us about like everything trans. Just as a note, and I probably should have said this at the top of the show, but we are unfortunately missing Nessa today, Pleasantly Twisted. They unfortunately could not make it, which sucks a little bit because non-binary people are part of the trans community, and I would have loved to have a non-binary creator on the show. But yeah, they were unfortunately some scheduling conflicts and they couldn't make it in the end. So that's the only reason that there is no non-binary representation on this show today. We did try and get somebody else in, but unfortunately we couldn't do that. Right. Besides that, yeah. So I actually want to know. Let's not jump into the trans question straight away. I just want to know about your personal stories and how you all got into content creation. Because that's always something that's at the back of my mind. And I know it's always the thing that like podcasts start with, but it's always a fun time like hearing how everybody does it. So Annie, how did you dive in?
Well, for me, it was I was definitely not having a good time when I started streaming and doing content creation. I had basically kind of just failed out of college, and I was working a delivery job as a delivery driver, and I worked the night shift from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., which was not good. It was not good. I do not recommend anybody working through the night because you will go crazy and lose your mind. But during the day, I didn't really like know what else to do, and I had been playing like Overwatch kind of as like my competitive game. I was like top 500, and I like watched a few streamers, and I specifically like watched a trans streamer because during that time I had kind of figured out that I was like trans and like kind of going through therapy. I was like paying through it for therapy with my job, my really bad job, and I saw this like trans streamer on Twitch, and I kind of like realized that they were happy despite all the hatred that you would get on Twitch when being trans like 7 years ago. I mean, I'm on the front page right now and I have people like hate rating me right now. Imagine that times 100. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's what the Twitch experience was like 5+ years ago. And but I mean, they were happy, and I would like hang out with them. I would talk to them all the time, and like I would ask them about like streaming stuff, and eventually like I was like, you know what, I should stream, and even if I like face a lot of hatred, it's just something that I kind of want to do. And eventually I started streaming like my Overwatch gameplay, and I mean, it kind of helped that I was like top 500, so I got like I got pretty big off of it. That's kind of where I got my start. I got partnered. I was able to quit my job, which was probably like the biggest thing for me, and I got this like tattoo. It's like a crescent moon to kind of remind me of like, getting out of the night, getting out of the, Night
Oh
job.
my god,
So,
I love that. I love the symbolism of that. It's always so cool
yeah.
when people like come up with tattoos and like there's this like real meaning behind that, and like that
Mhm.
must mean a lot. Yeah, that's awesome to hear. Like that journey though, getting into content creation. That's great. Juliancito, what about yourself? How did you get in?
I got in because it was like the time when Mario Maker 2 came out.
Oh,
And
okay.
so, yeah, I'd never seen anybody on Twitch, had never heard of Twitch. My partner at the time, um, we started going on because they were playing everybody's level. So you'd go make a level and you'd go submit it to a streamer and they'd play it and it's, oh, hey, that's cool. And then after a little while, I was like, oh, that seems like kind of a fun thing to do. And then just kind of went from there.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. Mario Maker 2. Oh, bringing people together. Let's go.
Yeah.
Quells, what about yourself? Not just content creation, but like voice acting in general. Like,
So
just do the thing.
yeah, they're kind of linked really, because it was during the pandemic, kind of around August time, and I already had like this mic and all this already, because I was like, maybe I kind of want to start streaming and do that kind of thing, and I did on and off. And then I started seeing Luke Correa and Gianni Montegrano's voiceover posts, and then like, oh, they're voice acting and stuff. It's like, well, I already have the equipment.
Mm.
I may as well give it a try, see where it goes. And then I just started dubbing over memes. Please don't look at the old ones; they're terrible. I had like no acting experience. The last thing I'd ever done as an acting thing in an actual like play was the last year of my primary school, where I was the sheriff of Nottingham, and that was it. And then like drama classes that were mandatory for secondary school, like for the first 2-3 years, whatever it was.
But you didn't do it at like GCSE or anything like that.
No, I
did
didn't
you?
take it as a class. I wanted to, and then talked myself out of it, and then like just went because it was essays, and I hate essays. I hate writing essays so much.
Oh god, yeah.
But then like I started doing it, and then started getting subscribers, and then I started like auditioning for stuff and like casting call club. I met Antonio Greco, the voice of Era in Warframe, through you, Mia. Because I remember I jumped into a voice call. You were playing Among Us. I jumped right as it
yeah.
ended, and I was like, "Oh damn, I missed it." Okay, and they're like, "Oh, and thanks to our special guest Antonio, the voice of Era." And I was like, "Shut up, no way. That's no." And he was like, "Is this a bit like, is this a joke I'm not getting that you don't know?" And I was like, "No, you're really cool. Like, I'd love to do voice acting stuff." And then he started mentoring me. I took classes. There was nothing more terrifying as someone who hasn't done much acting, was very fresh to it, and was worried about passing voice-wise, having your first ever guest coach for a class be Roger Clark, the voice of Arthur Morgan from Red Dead 2. That was terrifying. And yeah, it's kind of all just rolled on from there, really. I just kind of kept voicing memes and auditioning for stuff, and here I am.
Yeah,
now.
and you've amassed a rather large following doing it. So yeah,
Dear
congratulations.
God.
Mhm,
Yeah,
mhm.
it's at the point now where I've been recognized IRL. Like,
Oh really? Like
it was
in
out-
like where you live, or?
Yeah, so like I got recognized at TownCon last year. I was like, that's fine. There's a convention. I said I'd be there. That's understandable. And then I ate at this I got food at a fast food place, and as I was leaving, this person kind of looked at me weird, and I was like, okay, whatever. Like, fine. Go in my car, eat, go home. And then I had a Lancer tabletop session. And about halfway through, I see there's a new message request on Twitter, and they're like, "Hey, weird question, but did I see you outside this place in this town earlier
Oh,
on?" And I was like,
God. That's
"Yeah, that was
terrifying,
me."
honestly.
Well, a little bit, but honestly, the funniest part of it is that like my girlfriend keeps like teasing me and saying like, "Oh, you're famous, you're a celebrity." And I was like, "No, I'm not. I'm not famous. I'll only admit it if I get seen in public and someone recognizes me." And now it's happened, so I can't fight her.
Wow.
So.
I love that for you. I'm actually hoping, like, because it's a weird thing that like you don't really want necessarily, you want it to happen, but at the same time, if it does happen, especially where you live too, that might be a little bit
like
a little bit scary.
I can't deny the being well enough known to be recognized in public does kind of feed my ego a bit. And it's like, all right, I guess I am kind of cool, but at the same time, I'm like, oh dear God, please no.
Very cool. Well, I hope that you get recognized in public more, but not around where you live. Okay, trying to find a way to like navigate around that.
Yeah.
Right then, let's move on to all the good trans conversation. For those of you who are open to it, would anybody like to just like talk about your trans experience and how that was for you growing up? Again, If anybody's uncomfortable with that, don't have to. I know this is a very private thing. I will start off. For me, I always had like that feeling that something was off about myself and my identity, and I don't want to go yada yada yada, but essentially just not knowing what that was and just being like, yo, it'd be cool. It would have been nice if I was, born as a girl and stuff. That's but everybody has those feelings, right? Not every some people feel like that. But for a long time, I didn't do anything about it because the information out there was so sparse and ridiculous. This is me growing up in the 90s, though. We're talking the only representation that we had back then was Chandler's dad in Friends, or every single comedy movie being disgusted by the existence of a trans person, or trans people being seen as men in dresses, again with no representation at all for trans men, obviously, because that was a time, and that's still kind of pervasive to this day. But for me, just this idea in my head that if I ever came out myself, yeah, like chat is saying, murderers or murder victims is usually the way it went. So for me, it was I didn't ever want to be seen. If I ever came out, then I would just be treated like the other, the freak, or a man in a dress, and that was not something that I ever would attribute to myself, or wanted to be attributed to me. And it wasn't until I was in my early 20s that I actually started finding out. I started seeing people, and I think there was a trans man who worked. Actually, I worked at a video game store, and there was a trans man who worked at the Starbucks that was just outside. And I would go to the Starbucks very often because I was there, and I gained this infatuation with them. And then I started questioning my gender as well, because my sexuality, because I found out that they were a trans man, and so that started a lot of questions for me. But then I was looking up information online, and I saw all these beautiful people, because in my mind, whenever I was thinking of trans, I was so poisoned back then that I just automatically assumed that no trans person could pass. But then as soon as that information came across my mind, it's okay, how do they look like that? And you start finding out about hormone treatment and being able to have medical changes that actually affect your biology. And I was okay, this is a real thing, and this is something that I could actually pursue, that I could actually have a life that I'd want to live. And that's set me down my path. But yeah, I won't go into all the pain and suffering of that, but that's what I dealt with growing up. But I wonder if anybody else has similar experiences or different experiences. Yeah, feel free to jump in if you're comfortable sharing. You don't have to.
Does anyone else want to go? Or
I don't want to force anybody to talk about it, so because it's all very personal to us.
So I guess for me, I did kind of a similar thing where something felt off, but honestly, looking back, I think that was partly being trans and partly being really autistic, and no one seemed to notice or pick up. I don't know how, looking back on it. And I remember the idea kind of crept up on me. I think in an amazing kind of thing, when we had sex education in school, they covered for one lesson LGBT people. It's yes, lesbians exist and gay men exist, and then of course they talked about here are risks and issues, and then there was one 2-minute snippet about trans people, and if I'm remembering right, it was actually an interview with a trans man, but that was it. It was just oh yeah, no, I've been doing this and doing that, and I live my life like this, and it's all really cool, and I'm very happy. It's and that somehow didn't tick in my brain that this is an option. It just somehow didn't stick. It just kind of washed through me okay, cool, right, fine. Until I think it was one night I was in the shower, and I was just thinking, and the question what if I just want to be a girl? And then it was in Doctor Strange when he touches the butterfly and gets flung across space. That's what it was mentally, as all these little pieces kind of came together. That's why I cried whenever I got my hair cut as a kid, and that's why all my best friends in primary school were girls, and that's why I was upset. But and it all clicked. I remember writing out a letter on a notebook and going to school the next day and shakily handing it to my friends, and they read it, and I was oh dear God, this is this could be, everything could shatter in front of me, and they all read it as a group huddled around.
Oh God, that's I don't know if that's
5 of
better or
them
worse.
all that. Yeah. And this was in the middle of the school round as well. And then one of them just went like, "Oh, dead name, because I hadn't selected a name yet," and then just hugged me, and I was like, "Oh shit, this is okay. Everyone's cool and chill." And then like, whenever we had a house party, I would go along with like a little like shopping bag, and it would just have like a change of clothes and makeup and stuff. And I would at the start of the house party just nip to the bathroom, get changed, put on makeup, and then when it was time to go home, just swap back, take it all off, and then yeah, they were always super supportive and cool. So
Oh,
yeah.
that's very, very nice. I'm glad that you had that support. What kind of year are we talking for?
I think I realized around 15. I think somewhere around 15, and then
Oh, sorry, I just meant generally, like, was it like
Oh.
2000s or like?
oh yeah, so this would be the 2000s. Yeah.
Okay.
So like, cause I'm 26, so
Mm.
this was like 2000. It'd be, God, time. Yeah, it would have been like into the 2010s by the time I
Mhm.
like really started like doing anything.
Okay.
And pretty much everyone who knew was super chill, like at least around my friend groups and stuff. Like even people who had bullied me in the past, when it kind of became more of a general knowledge thing by the time it got to like the late like end of school years, no one gave me shit for it. It just sort of was like, this is kind of just a thing that we know about, but like eh. So
I'm really happy that that was the case for you because
yeah,
like
it was.
yeah.
There are other issues that I'm not
Mhm.
gonna talk about, but in general around friends and stuff, and like
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was all fine. And
Mhm.
like I remember there was one case where I'd spoken to the doctor, and they're like, right, here's like the thing for the clinic, you can phone da. And then in order for like school, like the school kind of knew, because one of the first people I talked to was like my pupil support teacher, and then there was some mix up with emails, and the doctor had sent an email to the general school email address, not to a specific person. And apparently one of the like clerks, one of the assistant people in the office was gonna like shout it from the heavens and tell everyone, and the head teacher had to like go and be like, "You will not do that. You will
Jesus
not,
Christ.
because that is like pretty sure that's illegal." Like
Just
you
over the
can't do this.
tannoy system, just like we have an
Yeah.
announcement to make. Yeah, no.
Yeah. So then I got called into like the head teacher's office, and I was like, "Oh dear God, what have I done?" And they were like, "Hey, so this has happened. We're still gonna keep it under wraps. Have you picked out a name? Like, what are you thinking? And then it was super nice and kind about it. So,
Mhm.
so yeah.
Epic. Wonderful. I'm sure there were hardships that came along with that as well, especially
Oh
probably,
yeah.
no doubt like stuff in our home lives and like but we won't necessarily go
Yeah.
into that.
Yeah.
Did anybody else want to chime in on this conversation, or are you going to keep that private?
Yeah, I mean, I think I always kind of, like many of us, I felt like, right, like for the more stereotypically boy type activities, right? I would have loved to get into football. I don't think my mom would have let me play football, even if I had been born cis, because she probably would have thought it was too dangerous. But
We're
you know,
talking
I always
is
wanted
that
to play
American
football.
football?
Yeah,
Is that
American football. Yeah. But yeah, so for like a long time, I just kind of didn't really know, because again, like similar to you, is the 90s, who had any
Mhm.
vocabulary for that. There was no representation anywhere for that.
Mhm.
So yeah, for a while I just was like, oh, I guess this is it. I guess I'm just like a tomboy, and that was it for a while. And then finally, once I got into college, there was an LGBT group on campus, and everybody there was kind of very open with gender and pronouns. And I was like, oh, so like this is a thing. Like I can test out new pronouns here. I can do different things. I can like explore more about myself. And then, ever since then, was like, yeah, that's it. That's what was missing.
Yeah, I love that. Let's go. And I'm so glad that you are where you are now. Annie, did you want to add anything, or you keeping that to yourself? It's fine if you are. That's fine too.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about it a little bit. I mean, obviously there's like the cliche of like, oh, I definitely played with Barbie dolls when I was younger, and like, that's kind of how I knew it. But I definitely did have like feelings of and I don't know if it was like related to me having like two sisters, but I really did like enjoy just like being feminine when I was like a lot younger. I remember specifically when I was like 5 years old, we had this dress up like board game or something where it had like princess accessories, and I remember like always wanting to play it because I wanted to like wear the princess accessories and everything. And it's funny that like looking back on that now, it's like, oh, that makes sense. But like, during, my formative years of like growing up, I basically ignored all signs of anything going wrong. There was when I was back then, when I was a religious kid, I would pray to God pretty much every night that I would like wake up a girl. Cis people definitely do that, right?
Yeah, totally. It's something cis people do.
Definitely. When I stopped being religious, it kind of became more so like my sisters would have like old clothes, and since I'm the youngest person, we had basically had like bags of like dresses and stuff in the basement. I would just wear those while I'm gaming, while I was home alone. I just wanted to be pretty, and I wanted to look cute and everything. Totally cis, by the way, during that time.
Yeah.
But I think what kind of like really opened my eyes is when I like actually like learned what a transgender person was. And this is really bad, but I learned it through like 4chan and like online forums, which unfortunately is like a big story with a lot of trans people, is that they do browse 4chan. And I was not a good person. I was very, very transphobic, but I knew I was trans. Like deep down, I was like, I know I'm trans, but I don't want to be because people hate trans people, is like, my sort of being a dumb teenager, right? Especially when you're on 4chan, it's like full of just hatred towards trans people. So of course that's going to like, make you not really want to come out of the closet for a while. But I mean, eventually I grew out of, the 14-year-old hatred phase. I started to really like think about my gender identity, and I kind of like accepted that I was trans pretty much in high school. I started browsing like, the Reddits, like Ask Transgender and all that kind of stuff, and really kind of like preparing myself to eventually transition. But unfortunately, I didn't want to like come out to my family. My family was like a little bit religious at the time, and I was very scared that I would get like kicked out of my family if I came out to them. So I kind of like hid it in sort of plans like, okay, when I move out of my house and I go to college, then I'll probably start like transitioning, and I'll probably start doing all this kind of stuff and like keep it under wraps until, I come looking like this. And then they're like, okay, something's up. Like something's a little weird with you. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But, I really wish I would have like transitioned in high school. I think I didn't want to do it because there was another trans girl at my high school, and Jesus, the way people treated her, like it was absolutely like, like imagine just being like all the haters in Twitch chat. Like imagine that like IRL, just saying that to your face, like, all that like just pure hatred that I would see she would get, just made me be like, you know what, maybe I'm making the right decision not to transition in high school. But I mean, I would say like, I don't really know because I'm not in high school and I don't really plan on going back. But I would say it's probably a lot better now than it was for like.
You would hope that it's better now.
You would hope that it's a lot better, and it's probably not easy, definitely. But I really, really wish I would have just done it anyway and like not given a fuck. And I think like I would probably be like a lot happier right now, to be honest. Just like things overall.
I think that's like an important through line as well. It's like we won't get too into transitioning young, but like the earlier that you do transition, usually the happier people will end up. I mean, like for those people that are watching that might not necessarily know anything about trans people, but once you go through like the biological puberty that you're born with, there are some like permanent changes that you can't do anything about unless well, there are certain permanent changes that you just can't do anything about, and then there's certain things like surgery that can take care of, like things like facial structure, like facial feminization, or for trans women, or like vocal surgery, but that's very risky. You can do stuff about like hairlines and stuff like that, but there is going to be certain things like like your frame, how your body grows, that if you go through the wrong puberty for you, you'll never be able to change. And I think it's very, very important to say that that's also the reason that you need to allow kids to be themselves and tell you who they are, and not necessarily restrict that. Obviously, with the full consent of parents and going through doctors and leaving it up to medical professionals, and definitely not lawmakers like we've been seeing right now who don't have any part in this family. They've never even met these people, and yet they're making decisions on their behalf, which is honestly terrifying.
Yeah,
Believe
I
trans
think,
children.
yeah, I think that, you know, had we had some of the, you know, more of the visibility when I was in high school at the very least, right? Like that would have been something I probably would have found out about myself much sooner. And I've got to say, I'm very envious of, like, you
Yeah.
know, the trans kids who get to go through life, right? Like they get to experience their life the way that they know they should, and as who they truly are, right? Like I do sometimes have some of that, you know, like wishing that I, you know, could go back, right, and like do things and like have people recognize me as the boy that I am, right, or like play
Yeah.
boy sports or do boy things, right? And also, you know, I mean, specifically for trans men, right, like if you're able to start on puberty blockers and then you can start cross hormone therapy at an appropriate age, you don't ever have to worry about getting top surgery, which is incredible.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something I'm a little envious of.
No, I absolutely, like, I feel the same way, and maybe that's because like we grew up, like you saying you're a '90s kid as well, like growing up in that generation where we didn't have that like visibility, we didn't have that, just like the information, and it's like people keep questioning, well, you know, is trans a trend, and like because there's so many more trans people now than there were, and it's like no, we just have the information is readily available now, and it's so interesting listening to the discussion of like how different it was. Like the times that we generally found out seems to coincide with like that information being more available and like online and the internet and message boards and being able to like find out these things easily, rather than just have the mainstream media be our representation of what being trans is. And of course it's better now because there's more representation. But yeah, and actually, let's jump to that. Is there are there any like trans characters or representation in media that you have enjoyed or loved? I'll give an example.
Brisket?
Just Brisket. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brisket.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brisket's good.
Brisket's pretty cute.
Brisket is very cute. For those Brisket, for those not in the knowledge of Brisket, that's Bridget. Is it Bridget? It's Bridget, isn't
Yeah,
it? From the Guilty Gear series, who in the last, I think it was Guilty Gear Strive, they finally confirmed was a trans character, which is really cool because for a long time that character was just like presented as like just a cross-dressing boy for like reasons to do with like their family and stuff. Here's the thing, I don't even play Guilty Gear, but like Bridget is that cool of a character that I know some of the backstory of Bridget as well, which is really interesting. Yeah. Brisket, biscuits, like as soon as that news came out, the trans community just flocked to Bridget. Absolutely great character. I think it's a shame that there is a certain contingent of people out there that weren't necessarily on board with that, and it wasn't the people that you thought would be not on board with that. It was a different sect of people, but we don't talk about them. And for those of you who know, you know. But yeah, I'll give an example. So I watched Nimona recently, and I thought that was like some very good like non-binary / gender fluid kind of like rep there, where like Nimona is this character who essentially she can shapeshift into any form that she likes, whether that's like an animal or a boy or a girl or a dragon. Is it a dragon? I have no idea. But it's been a while since I've watched the movie. But like she can shapeshift into anything, and the way that character is presented is that like I think they use she they pronouns.
I think
Was it
so?
just they them?
I'm not entirely sure, to be honest.
But they present like masculine and feminine. Like it's very gender fluid type of look that they go for. Voiced by is it Chloe Grace Moretz? Who
I
voices
think that's
her?
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty sure.
Voiced by Chloe Grace Moretz, and that film does a fantastic job just like presenting a character that is just not necessarily wants to be pinned down by gender or gender roles, because they can and are anything at any time. And it just really spoke to the trans experience and that form of like allegory. Obviously, you know, like trans people, we can't transform into animals and like wild
Not
shape
yet.
or not yet. No, no.
Yeah.
You ever heard about HRT to turn into a dragon?
I've
Dragon
seen that.
HRT.
Yeah.
Mhm,
I think someone's
mhm, I've
doing-
seen those
isn't-
comics.
I'm not sure if it's the same artist, but I think there's someone, either they or someone else is doing one where it's Puppy, like Thingy, it's Puppy HRT.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm sure we'll get to a point in the far distant future where like you can just print out a new body and then just consciousness switch to it. But I won't get into that because then I'll start thinking about Soma.
Oh
and
yeah,
then
the
that's like, oh, God.
transhumanism,
God, so much.
cyberpunk. Oh jeez.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
I know there's a bunch of trans rep in like Rainbow Six Siege. I know
Mm.
that there's a few in there, but I think the one character I think of instantly is Catalyst from Apex, because
Mhm.
like she's like, and they didn't like hide it. They weren't like, oh, you know, we're gonna think it. Like in her reveal trailer, we're like, this is the new character we're putting in Apex. There's like a bit where one character's like, well, you know, what's the toughest thing you ever had to do? And she goes like, well, my transition was pretty tough. Like, you know, they're just out like, this is a trans woman. We're not hiding it. It's not secret lore you have to dig for. This is just out and out. Even one of her drop lines is like, I'm the grim trans witch your parents warned you about. Which is fantastic. And also the voice actress, Melly
Sorry.
Grant, is a trans
Yeah.
woman herself. So, and like, from what she said when like she auditioned and then like Respawn brought her in, I was like, right, okay. Like she worked with the team to make the character. They weren't just like, right, here's the character we have, here you go. They actually worked together to like add certain traits and put stuff in there. Like the whole like paganism stuff, which, you know, is pretty popular around trans women specifically, I've noticed. So yeah.
Yeah. I did want to ask Juliancito, for yourself, obviously there's not, it seems like it's still a pervasive problem that there's not that much representation for trans men. Is there any that you have seen that you would want to share about, or is that something that you're acutely aware of, or is it something you think about?
Yeah, there is. I know that there's one. I can't even think of it. I've never watched the show, and shame on me because I should. But I know there's a show like there's a medical something show. I don't know what the show is, but the actor is Brian Michael Smith. So yeah, I know he's been at least on one show. And then as far as video games and stuff, the only one that like regularly comes to mind without having to give too much thought to it is Tyler Ronan from Tell Me Why, which I really liked. I mean, I played that game on stream, and I think, right, like if a cis person was playing the game, like it's great, like they can get a little bit of insight, right, information, but I think it is very unique and special to have like trans people playing the game, especially trans men, right, like to talk with whoever's watching, right, about the experiences. Like I very specifically remember one scene where Tyler was like looking at photos of him from the past, and it's like he made some kind of comment, and I was like, it was like basically about how looking at old photos is kind of strange, right? Because it's like, well, yeah, like I know that's me, but like it's not me, but it is. And it's like this weird like liminal space where you exist but you don't exist,
Yeah.
So but yeah, so that's probably the only one I can really think of in video games. But I do wish there was more trans male representation, but I think it's, I mean, certainly better from when I was a kid. But yeah, and I don't really know why that is.
Yeah.
I don't know if people just aren't as interested with trans men or don't. I don't know.
Well, I think it's part of a wider problem is that like trans men are very often like left out of the conversation when it's talking whenever we're seeing conversations about trans people. Like the focus is usually on trans women for some reason. Mostly because of like our naysayers are going to like the whole lie of trans women being predators and this, that, and the other, so we are a threat. But it's maybe it's an echo of that like trans men just get left like just in the background to just like never be part of like any kind of conversations there, and it's really hard to see and even figure out like why that is. And I feel like there needs to be more done to make sure that trans men have be an equal part of these conversations. Well, obviously not the hate conversations, but just in general, and like representation is there. So it's like someone saying in chat, Titan saying in chat, Lev in Last of Us 2 was a trans man. I've not played Last of Us 2, so I wouldn't. Has anybody played Last of Us 2? No, we wouldn't know. That unsubstantiated claim there. Apparently, a character in Last of Us 2 is a trans man. So yeah, I will have to look into that. The fact that I still haven't played Last of Us 2 is terrible for me, but because I actually really do want to play that. Right, moving on. So let's talk about allies and cis allies specifically. Is there anything that you would want like our cis allies to take on board when it comes to like the trans community? Like, anything that like you think that they should know about, or anything that they can like do for us as trans people?
I can think of kind of two sort of things. Apologies if there's background noise. Someone's running a tap somewhere, so the water tank's screaming. So I guess the two, one's kind of more like voice acting wise, and one's like kind of general like talking about trans issues. And because I see every now and again there'll be a cis ally who makes a well-meaning post about something to do with trans people, but something's not quite right, or they're like conceding on a point to someone who doesn't want trans people to have rights. Like, oh, well, I can understand why we do it in this instance. Like, no, that it's all bad. Don't give points for that kind of stuff. And when trans people try and correct them, like, well, no, it's not like this. This is how, this is our experience, or, try and educate them on what it's like being trans. The trans people involved get shot down and be told, like, basically, no, get back in your place. We, the cis people, are talking. Which, please don't do that. Like, of course, sometimes I can get how it can be seen as very aggressive when you make a point that you're like, I'm trying to help these people. And then the people you think you're helping don't like how you're helping and try and like adjust it. And yeah, I can see how that can be like a bit like, I'm trying to think the right word. I can see how that can be taken badly, and then for them to be defensive. But surely if you're talking about a minority that needs protecting, maybe listen to that minority and elevate people in the community to speak instead of just relying on cis people to do it.
You just reminded me. I had this experience on Twitter, of all places, of course, back when it was still called Twitter, where I think I did some kind of post, and I think this is during the time when all the like this was around the time when the JK, well, there's always JK stuff going on, when the whole Hogwarts Legacy game was coming out. We won't get into that though, because that was a crap show. But I think I used the term trans woman, and I didn't put the space in between to separate trans and woman. And then I had somebody in my replies screaming at me about that those are two separate words, and you're disrespecting the trans community. And like I had to go to this person. I'm a trans person. Like I'm literally part, like I am of that community. So it's like, it's this weird thing. Like they were a cis person trying to tell me, and technically they were correct about the wording, but the fact that they were so like militant and like, was kind of like a nightmare. So like, I wouldn't want to see that in any like actual allies to the community, personally, like, especially when they're doing things that could be potentially worse for our community. I know they want to help, but sometimes their actions are only making things worse. I feel like it's always better to like signal boost the voices of trans people rather than trying to speak on behalf of them.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if everybody agrees with that. Yeah,
I totally agree. I think it goes like without saying too that there are people who try to like look like they're an ally or look like a trans person who will have these takes where they will be super aggressive, they will say like bad stuff, like psyop kind of stuff, does happen a lot, especially with the trans community regarding those issues. I mean, like sites like 4chan will literally have these whole like plans to execute, basically to like make trans people look bad on like various social platforms. And I would even say, like, I know you don't want to get into like the Hogwarts Legacy, right? But
we can. I was just touching on it, but we can totally get into it.
But like, I would say the majority of like people who were really, really angry and like outspoken in, you know, how people were saying they got like doxxed and were getting like death threats and everything. I don't know a single trans person who actually like gave that much of a shit about it. Like they like, sure, if you go ahead, play it, right? I'm not gonna play it. I'm not gonna support that person, right? But if you were a Harry Potter fan, like I'm not gonna yell at you and tell you to die, right?
Yeah.
But you have all these people saying like, oh, I'm getting like doxxed and death threats from these trans people, and it's like I would click on their profile and it's just like account made 2 days ago. You know what I mean? Like there's just so much like there's so much like psyop potential with like trans issues.
I mean,
and stuff like that. So I don't know.
That's such a pervasive problem as well, because like you look at like the some like mass shootings that have happened in the US. Like how many times has like 4chan or similar sites like tricked people into believing that those shooters are like trans people. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. I might have to get water in a second. But yeah,
it happens with every mass shooter. Every mass shooter, the first question is, were they trans? Like it's so weird. It's so weird.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I remember at that time, like, I'm sure there's probably like, because Twitter is Twitter, and there's going to be people out there, because like you notice when like people are like younger, and again, take this with a grain of salt, but this is my personal anecdotal experience, that sometimes when people are very new to like coming out, there is this, and I was like this, there's this feeling that you have to defend your community like very, very strongly. And so you will just be essentially an attack dog and like on like to anybody who's against you. And I've seen that with people, but I feel like that was something that I did. That's something definitely I grew out of, where that might have been doing more damage than good at the time. We do need to be open to have conversations, not necessarily with like fascists or oppressors, just generally with people to just have general conversations and try and explain. A lot of people are too far gone at this point, though, unfortunately, which is pretty sad. But it's all it's definitely up to the allies to like help us have those conversations as well, because a lot of the time, like if you think about it, in the content creation scene, the trans content creators, most of us were much smaller than like our cis content creator like equivalents. And like the things that we say are not going to reach as many people as something that they might put out there. So like it's really up to them as allies to try and like, again, signal boost our voices, right? Yeah, definitely. Especially with
solidarity, especially because like I feel like it really sucks that this happens, but I feel like if you didn't say you were trans and you like really hid that, you would have a way higher potential to be more popular online than if you were openly trans, which really does suck. I mean, I think about that all the time, but at the same time, like I don't want to hide who I am. I want to be like good representation for trans people and for cis people to interact with a trans person in a way that isn't, you know, Fox News of a trans person freaking out, you know, about pronouns and all that kind of stuff. Because like, I mean, like, I just want to show like cis people and trans people like what an actual trans person looks, sounds, and acts like, right?
How about you, Juliancito? Is there anything else that you would want cis allies to be aware of or to do?
I mean, other than just signal boosting, I mean, just being there, right? Being there as support, right? You know, sometimes things get really overwhelming. There's a lot going on in the world, not just with trans people, but everywhere, right? Like Palestine, free Palestine, all of that, right? Like and it can be incredibly overwhelming, especially once you get into intersectionality and like multiple layers of having identity and connection and things like that. And but sometimes just a little message, right? Like, hey, I see you, I love you, you matter to me. Or a random, hey, here's $10, go get yourself a slice of pizza or a coffee, or right, like just little things, because sometimes it can be if we're, I feel like there's always so much like I mean, here in America at least, right, like call your senators, call your representatives, write your letters, and it's like I could be writing and calling all day long because there's so many issues that sometimes you just want to take that personal moment and just be like, yep, I'm here, I got your back, I see you.
Most definitely. Moving on then. Obviously we want the best from our cis allies, and like definitely having them just like being in our corner and speaking up when we're like feeling like we're by ourselves is definitely something that I personally would want. Like if I'm in a fight with someone, it would be nice to know that there's somebody standing behind me, like at least offering me some kind of support, and that doesn't always happen. So if you see somebody in need of help them. Other than that, so we can all agree, I feel like trans people deserve more than just a 2 days in a year to celebrate themselves, right? Like we have Trans Day of Visibility, we have Trans Day of Remembrance, we have one day where we're allowed to be visible, which apparently has upset a lot of people this year because we had the audacity of stumbling onto Easter, which changes its day every single year. But we've been doing this since 2009 or something. I think it's always been the 31st of March. It's interesting. But yeah, we have Trans Day of Visibility today. And we have Trans Day of Remembrance, which is just like when we just remember all those that have unfortunately lost their lives. But yeah, as somebody on Twitter said, it today is the greatest Easter egg hunt that there's ever been. So, but yeah, do you feel like there's a need for something like a month or at least a week or something like that dedicated to signal boosting more of like the struggles that the trans community goes through? Or do you think that the 2 days is enough?
I mean, I imagine like Pride Month is kind of like all encompassing. I don't know. I just kind of imagine like that's my month to be just like extra gay, I guess.
Yeah.
So
extra gay. It would be nice, actually. You know what? As a content creator, yourselves, and this might not necessarily. I'm not sure if you have a deal with anything like sponsorships, Quills, but you find that we get offers for that kind of thing, not necessarily more recently, but like I used to get like a lot of like sponsorship offers or reach out about like charity stuff during stuff like Pride Month. But it would always be, hey, can you do free labor for us? Which was like, can you raise money for charity? Like, can you raise money for the Trevor Project? Which is like, these are all great causes, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of companies reaching out to minority people, queer people that are already struggling to then take money from their community, which is probably going to be comprised of other queer people which are struggling, to give money to other queer people that are struggling. And it would be nice maybe if like other companies would throw us a bone every now and then and sponsor us, give us more sponsorships. But I feel like since the whole Dylan Mulvaney, was it Dylan Mulvaney?
Yeah.
That situation.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was crazy.
I feel like that's had a massive knock-on effect of like companies just being so terrified now and just to work with trans people in general, because that wasn't even a sponsorship. That was just a can, a special can that they were sent.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I think
Corporations are not your friend. And I feel like especially corporations will try to use like minorities to sort of like basically use them and then ghost them if anything goes wrong. The second they get pushed back, they are not responding to you. They are not in your corner. They were never your friend to begin with. They just wanted to potentially, connect with your community so that they could make money off of you. That's essentially what corporations do with like minorities and trans people and gay people.
Yep, just like Target did when they pulled their whole Pride line.
Yeah. They're spineless. They will never be in your corner. And that's why, like, if you are going to take a corporate sponsor as a queer person, like you have to understand the pros and the cons of it, because like you could get your face on a can, a personalized can, and then suddenly you are the talking point for the next year, right? And you can't leave your house. And
I feel like that's a very special line that only we have to tread, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a cis person, that's never going to happen to a cis person, even if they're like, you know, unlikable, right?
Mm-hmm. It's honestly ridiculous. And yeah, I really hope that if there is anybody out there that gives a damn about the trans community watching that, you try and help make those changes within your own corporations to actually, like, well, one, protect the people that you're working with too, and at the very least stand behind them, because it's ridiculous otherwise. So let's talk about the younger generation. So if there is anybody out there who might be questioning their gender, they could be, you know, newly part of the trans community, or they could be an egg right now. They might not even know that they are trans. Is there any advice that you give to anyone who is like either new to the community or just questioning?
I mean, that's
For myself,
hard.
yeah, that is very hard. Okay, so I'll start with this because this is something that I've thought about for a while. For me, I would say, and this is definitely advice that I would have wanted when I was starting out, definitely practice being kinder to yourself. And the most important thing is allow yourself time. You're going to want to rush into a lot of things. If you're like, just if you're starting on hormones, for instance, you're going to like start on hormones and you're just going to assume, okay, I want these changes now. But you got to remember that these things, like, I don't look the way I did like 10 years ago. It took me like 10 years plus to get to the point where I'm at. But like when I started out, it was a long process. So you can't go into your journey or your process with the idea that things are just going to change overnight, because they're not. And if you think that they are, you are going to set yourself up for failure and set yourself for dashed expectations. So be kind to yourself and allow yourself that time to just live and not put too much pressure on yourself. It is a journey, and eventually you will get there, but it unfortunately takes time. Yeah. Is there anything else anybody else wants to add to that?
I would say if you're questioning, just try stuff out and see if it works. Like if you're like, if you play, you know, D&D or anything similar, and like say you're questioning if you're trans femme, play a female character, and like people will say, like, you know, use female pronouns for you, like for your character, and see if that fits, and kind of put yourself in the character's shoes and see if that kind of works for you. For like clothes and stuff, honestly, don't listen to the Twitter, Reddit general, like, oh, you bought the Amazon skirt, how very daring of you. Buy the Amazon skirt, try it on, see if you like it.
Yeah.
Experiment, wear things, try makeup.
For the first year, you're allowed to do all that
Do
stuff
whatever
that
you
people
want.
find cringe, okay? You're
Like-
allowed to do that.
Exactly, and like try different hairstyles, try dyeing your hair, like try stuff with makeup. Like this red thing, I only started doing it last couple months because of Signalis, and it looks great. It turns out it works for me really well. Experiment, try stuff, like just go for it. You know, I know a few people have messaged me and like commented like, oh hey, like you helped me figure out I was trans, because like I didn't even know you were trans voicing this stuff. It's like, try vocal training, try giving it a shot and trying to sound more femme, more mask, or whatever it is you want to do. Just give it a try. Just do it. See if you like it.
On the topic of trying things, yeah, like if especially for going to more trans mask, right? Like if you're somebody who has always had really long hair and you're really worried about, you know, making such a drastic change and cutting your hair, just do it. I mean, it'll grow back. If you absolutely hate it, you can grow it out again. It is a pain, I'm not gonna lie, right? Like who wants to go
Yeah.
from really short hair to
And-
like the whole process again? But
There's always wigs as well in the meantime until you get
exactly,
there. So.
exactly. You could always wear a wig. You could always, right? Because you won't know if you don't try. And I feel like for most things, especially things that are very simple and easy to do, like hair, makeup, clothes, you know, things like that, you know, trying out different pronouns, it's not going to hurt you. It's not going to hurt anybody else. So you might as well test it out.
Most definitely. I definitely, there's something I wanted to add and I've completely forgotten what it was. It just left my brain. The train has left the station without me, unfortunately. Oh, what was that? Yeah. Oh, yes. I think, yeah, it's like you're saying, I think it's okay to just to play with your gender. Just because you're doing certain things doesn't, it might not necessarily mean that you're trans, and it doesn't, there's no like barriers to entry either. You can, if you're a guy, you can play with, like femininity. You can play with like wearing clothes that aren't necessarily deemed as being for guys. Don't let anybody else dictate what your gender says you can do with yourself and your body, and you've only got your own life, so just live it as authentically as you can. And if you have the means and you're not in any danger to do that, do it. I mean, there's no reason not to.
Plus, one thing as well is don't be afraid to kind of mix things up. Like in terms of, say, if you're a trans femme, don't be afraid to be like a stone cold butch, like and like be like a tomboy. Do it. Like it, like cis women who dress like our stone butches and dress very mask are still women. So are you. If you do it, you're transitioning. And same the way around. If you want to be a very feminine trans man, do it. You're still a guy. Just because you dress more femininely doesn't mean you're less of a guy. Like it's do whatever. Do what makes you happy.
Yeah. Awesome. Right then, we are going to wrap up very shortly, but before we do, we're going to be moving on to a section called Show Me What You Got. So if you're unaware of this was something new that we brought in for this season of the Gaming Mag podcast, but our guests have all brought in an item or an image or something that they are going to show off for us. And it's a little bit like a show and tell. So if anybody... So Annie, show me what you got. What did you get? What did you bring today for us to take a look at?
I have this little guy right here. So this is a puppy. This is pretty important to me, mainly because when I was like a kid, this is like the first Beanie Baby I ever had, and like I would carry this around with me as a kid, like everywhere. I remember vividly, like my ideal time to just like play with myself was just like running around with this thing and like throwing it in the air and catching it and stuff like that. And so this is a really big part of like my childhood of just kind of like, I don't know, my first friend basically. But I think eventually as I got older, I unfortunately kind of like got pushed into like more masculine stuff. Like I had to kind of get rid of like, the baby stuff of like all my blankets, all my like Beanie Babies and all that kind of stuff. And I, had to be a man. I had to play hockey. I had to do sports and all that kind of stuff. And I remember like I had to give this away and I cried for like a week straight, basically. But recently I bought this for myself again to kind of like reconnect with my childhood and just especially with like being trans, it kind of you can kind of like really feel like you like lost your childhood in a way, right? Where it's like, dang, I could have lived as like my gender from my childhood and it could have been way better. It could have been this, it could have been that. And it's really easy to kind of get into like the doomer mindset of like, I had no childhood. But I think it's more important that you realize that you did have a childhood. It might have not been, exactly what you wanted out of it, but you can still like reconnect with that like inner child that you had within you, and kind of like make amends with that kid inside of you. So that's kind of why I got this, to kind of like remind myself that I always was there, right?
Yeah. I think that's so easy as well. Like we can, like, for the longest time, and I don't know if it's the same for anybody else, but like I hated like that little boy that I used to be for a really long time, until like I came to like the realization when I was talking to somebody else that like that kid was a victim of like circumstance. Like that kid didn't do anything wrong. They were just in that situation. So like you shouldn't have any hatred for any past self, and it's not like you lost anything. Everybody like did the best that they could with what they were given as trans people. So Yeah, again, just that thing of like practicing kindness to yourself, and you did have a childhood, as you were saying. It just might not have gone the way that you wanted, but it made you the person that you are today. Juliancito, I'm gonna go ahead and bring up yours real quick. So as soon as I do, you can tell me what this is. So if you want to introduce it.
Yeah, it's probably one of the coolest things that's ever happened to me in my life. Was back in 2021 being chosen by Twitch to be part of the Pride campaign that year, and then getting a full-on billboard in Times Square, which was really wild. I mean, I can't say that I know a ton of trans people in general, whether they're streamers or what have you, just in general, like who have been on a billboard in Times Square. So I think it's really, just it's cool to me that I
It's
was there.
incredibly
And, like,
cool. Like it's really cool. Like yeah.
That's
yeah,
awesome.
and like especially like so I grew up on Long Island, and so I would go into Manhattan a lot as a kid, and so I think especially having such a very close to home tie, like I mean obviously right, it's like huge, it's Times Square, the whole world knows Times Square, but like also having that very close home connection as well. I went down, I mean it was only a year-ish after COVID had, kind of hit and everything, but it was like the first time I had traveled away from where I currently live to go back to New York City. So I was like masking up and trying to stay away from everybody, and it was kind of a wild time, but it was great. And I went over there with my dad, my mom, my grandma, and like it was great. We spent the whole day there. So
Oh, that's so
Yeah,
cute.
and-
You had your whole
That's
family.
yeah,
out
and
there.
like and I have to say as well, like my parents and my grandma, like they've always been so incredibly supportive that it was it's been really nice obviously having them just in my life and being so supportive of me, and then being able to go to Manhattan and see something like that with them was just incredible.
I love that for you. And honestly, it's such a fabulous display as well. And that's a very, very good picture of you, by the way. That's such a good picture.
It's great.
Goddamn.
It's fantastic.
Right then, Quills, show me what you
Alright,
got.
So originally I was gonna do the usual and pull Signalis, but then I thought of a better example. It's down here. So I have the Lotus statue from Warframe, and it's from that scene from the second Dream quest. Spoilers for like an 8-year-old quest now. So
For a free-to-play game that's been
for a free-to-play
available
game's been out, yeah.
for
So
almost 11 years at
basically,
this point.
And also it's all in the marketing now. So this is when we first discovered that the Warframes that we've been using are basically like biomechanical like robots we pilot, and we are like a kid that's been like using magic void powers to do it. And there's that one line like in that bit which is always gets me, is that dream not of what you are but of what you want to be. And that there's so many bits in Warframe that have a very, to me, trans underline to them that like
I'm getting freaking emotional hearing that as a
it's such-
Warframe fan. Goddamn.
Oh, and it means
Like,
so much to me.
swelled in my
it's-
chest.
Like it's such a good like in general, like just for not just for trans people but for anyone, it's such a great line. But for being trans especially, and having the whole like there's this, outer shell that you've been seeing for ages, like your Warframe going around like blowing shit up. And then out of like a lotus pod just comes this poor scared kid that is suddenly thrust into like the world for the first time. It's like, hey, this is the real you. And it had such a huge resonance with me. Which is why
Who's
when I
been
said
through
getting the voice
so much
acting-
trauma as well.
Yeah, like, and then we also have the stuff afterwards with the War Within and the new war going on, and it's why I settled on Warframe to be my dream game of voice in, and I finally did it. I'm in, which is why I also have this Warframe tattoo as well. So
Yay.
So, yeah.
That's very, very cool. I don't have anything specific to show today, but I did want to give a shout out to my time as a content creator and just like the messages that I've received over the years of people telling me that you were the reason that I started questioning my gender, or the reason that I ended up starting my transition. That has always meant an incredible amount to me, that I would have that much of an impact on anybody's life. And I just wanted to say, if that meant an incredible amount. And if you were one of those people, that meant a lot. So thank you. I don't have, unfortunately, I've lost those messages to time. I should have really like saved them, but I'm not that much of a narcissist. So just not that much of a narcissist. A little bit of narcissism, just not that much. But yeah, thank you for that. And yeah. I want to say a massive thank you to everybody for joining me today on the show. I want to give you all a chance to tell everybody once again who you are and where people can find your content and what you've got coming up as well. And we'll do that in the same order. So Annie, tell everybody who you are, what you got coming up, and all of the things.
Yeah, those are my dogs. I'm Annie.
They're like they're in the background being like, you tell them who you are, Annie. Let's go.
Yeah. That's all I need to say, to be honest. So yeah, find me on Twitch, find me on Twitter, Annie Dro on all my socials. So yeah, nothing really upcoming yet. I would like to eventually probably get into like voice acting and like getting into the more like YouTube kind of stuff in the future. I think that's kind of like the only plans I have right now. But yeah, otherwise just kind of just hanging in there.
Epic. Wonderful. And Quills, what about yourself? What have you got coming up? Where can people find your stuff?
So you can find me on YouTube under Voice Quills and on Twitter at Voice Quills. I very occasionally stream on Twitch at Voice_Quills because I can't keep anything consistent in my life. For stuff coming up, the only thing really is I have a video project in the works that the script isn't even done yet. And it was meant to be 10 minutes and it's gonna be about an hour probably. And then I guess just keep an eye out for things I'm in. If you want to hear my old work that's finally out, Fida Pudi Samurai, it got its 1.0 release. I have played through and finished it. It's very good. It's like a roguelike Duke Nukem boomer shooter, but very waifu. Very waifu. Probably not the most Twitch safe game in the world to play, but it's very fun.
Awesome. I look forward to actually checking that out because I know you and oh gosh,
Abby Cadabri.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're
and
also in
Gianni's in it too.
Oh, Gianni's in it too. Very cool.
Gianni, he's only in like a little bit, but he is in there.
That's awesome. I love to hear that. And Juliancito Hun, what about yourself? Where can people find your content and what have you got coming up? I know you're not streaming necessarily at the moment, but you said you might be getting back into that. So
yeah. You can find me Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, _Juliancito. And yeah, who knows? I mean, I'm definitely hoping to get back into streaming sometime soon, probably playing some Baldur's Gate or who knows, whatever else we'll play. I also now I'm into 3D printing, so I might be doing some like 3D designing, 3D printing on streams. So like maybe some body doubling streams, so you can check out for that. And also we'll be dipping my toe in the DM waters, just in an offline game to start. But if I kind of get into it, who knows, you might find me DMing a game on my channel sometime soon.
Let's go. I love that. Awesome. So that is the end of the podcast and the end of the season. I've been your host, Mia Byte, for this season of the Gaming Mag podcast. You can find me over at twitch.tv/MiaByte or MiaByte pretty much on everything. Immediate future, we have more Helldivers and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth coming up, and I don't see that changing. I think I'm playing Freedom Planet 2 next week as well, which is going to be a little bit of fun. But yeah, please check out the stream, come on down, and because I'm not sure when we'll be back on the gaming podcast. The Gaming Awards are supposed to be out in June now, so maybe there'll be something around then. But that is essentially a wrap for the season. In the meantime, you can go follow the Gaming Mag channel on YouTube, Twitch, and make sure that you head on over to gamingmag.com. Check out all of the articles and all of the stuff. Support Gaming Mag through this time. But until I see you again, if I see you again, this has been a lot of fun, and the gaming podcast has meant a lot to me over the time that I've been doing it. So, this has been a fantastic conversation today. Thank you all for taking the time, and I will hopefully see you all soon. Bye for now.